We'll now welcome to the stage our panellists for the first bite-sized game changer, Energy Unpacked. The low-carbon energy economy, already worth £1.2 billion a year to Greater Lincolnshire, holds exceptional world-leading potential, offering an unprecedented level of private investment of £60 billion over the next 15 years. There are major opportunities for growth in offshore wind, as well as in the development of other low-carbon goods and services, alongside decarbonisation and carbon capture and storage projects together transforming the fossil fuel industries. The Humber is the UK's energy estuary, hosting 2 of the UK's 6 oil refineries and the UK's second largest chemicals cluster, and is also leading the way in the green energy revolution to decarbonise and develop green products and jobs. At the LEP, we are coordinating activity across these huge agendas and are about to launch a green energy plan for the region. We are starting the session with Lauren Little, Senior Stakeholder for Ørsted in Grimsby, who runs the largest offshore wind farm in the world. Lauren promotes the transformational impact the offshore wind industry is having in Grimsby and the wider Humber region. Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks everybody for having me here at the LEP Conference this morning. I think it's the first time that Ørsted's ever spoken here, so thank you. And I'm delighted to be here on the energy panel alongside colleagues. So I'm representing Ørsted and the Humber Offshore Wind Cluster, and I'm going to speak about how the offshore wind industry is pioneering the transition to net zero from right here in this region. So right now, wind turbines offshore are providing millions of UK homes with clean green power. What started off as something small, some may say a novelty, as 2 turbines were erected off the coast of Blyth in the early 2000s, just last week broke a national grid record as 53% of UK electricity demand was met by offshore wind. This record was broken because today the UK has 14 gigawatts of operating capacity from more than 40 offshore wind farms, and there's more growth planned. In fact, there will be £17.2 billion invested every single year to 2030 to reach a target of 50 gigawatts by this date. It's a game-changing sector, and this region plays such a significant part today and will continue to as we strive towards this national target. Just off our coast, we have 8 offshore wind farms in operation, 1 in construction and 5 in development. That's 35% of the total offshore wind operating capacity today, and combined they provide power for over 4.4 million homes. Behind that are a highly skilled regional workforce of 4,700 today, rising to over 14,700 by 2030, as we accelerate the build-out of offshore wind and move away from our reliance on fossil fuels. Ørsted are the industry champion for the Humber Offshore Wind Cluster and are proud to work with partners. We're leading the way today, and we're a blueprint for countries across the world and want to continue growing. Just yesterday, we hosted a delegation of 25 from South Korea and have had delegations as far as Australia. So we're focusing on our future workforce requirements, working with education providers and how we can increase diversity in the sector. We're pulling together all the innovation strands with ORE Catapult, developer partners and universities. We're mapping our supply chain and making it easier for businesses to access this industry. And we're working with LEPs and local authorities on our future infrastructure needs so we can keep building projects off our coast. So a little bit more about Ørsted. So we're based just by the Grimsby Dock Tower. Our state-of-the-art facility, the East Coast Hub, is the home to the operation and maintenance of 6 offshore wind farms and a dedicated team of over 500 people. In fact, this facility that's been likened to Thunderbird's HQ is the largest facility in the world for offshore wind. But it hasn't always been this way, and with every industry growth story, or any story of success, there's a starting point. And ours was a decade ago here in Grimsby. Just a decade ago, the site where our East Coast Hub stands today was a timber yard. With support from this region, local authorities, LEPs and ABP, we arrived and the site was cleared and made into a gravel car park where 2 porta cabins then stood for us to work from. We had a team of less than 20 people back then, but today our current cohort of apprentices is higher than that. Our focus back then was on a pioneering offshore wind farm called Westernmost Rough. It had 35 turbines. In the years that followed, we acquired Lynx, welcomed Gunfleet Sands into our fleet and built a further 3 offshore wind farms. It's a phenomenal achievement, not only for the pace we've achieved this, but also for the scale. 2 of these projects are the largest offshore wind farms in the world, Hornsea 1 and 2. This moment would have been hard to envisage when we first started. The Hornsea projects have been described as man-on-the-moon missions, but we're here today celebrating 2 that are now in operation. And we're not done yet because there's 2 more to deliver in the future, Hornsea 3 and 4. Today, our total capacity from Grimsby meets the electricity needs of 10% of UK's homes, or 5% of the UK's total electricity requirements. By 2030, we'll be on track to power over a quarter of UK households, and we've invested £9 billion to date, with another £14 billion by the end of the decade. But for us, it's not just all about the electricity we generate, it's about the people, the place, and creating a sustainable future. So over the period to 2030, the number of people working out of the East Coast hub will increase to over 800, adding high-value green jobs to the economy. Our current Ørsted workforce is over 80% local, and we expect this to increase and continue. Today we have 9 apprentices qualified and a further 20 going through their training, and next year we'll be hiring our largest ever cohort, all delivered in partnership with Grimsby Institute. So we're proud to support this once-in-a-generation transformation of Grimsby and the wider region. We've put down our roots here and we're passionate about changing the future. We've already invested £45 million into the local community, education and skills development, which includes £1 million to the Grimsby Youth Zone. We want the generation of today and the next generation to know about this industry and the sustainable long-term careers they can have here right on their doorstep in Greater Lincolnshire, and we're proud to be a cornerstone employer. So with Hornsea 3 and 4 around the corner for us, and Sophia and Dogger Bank South, and more in the pipeline for our developer partners, we're excited to be here in this region, working with all of you over the next decade.
Thanks for that, Lauren. I think you can understand from some of those figures just how big the Ørsted operation is and just what growth potential it gives this area of the country. One of the jobs we're turning our minds to now is to understand better the supply chain. There's a lot more of UK manufactured elements to the wind sector that's coming our way, and we want to make sure we have a handle on people who could supply into that sector. Now for something different, to give us a public sector approach to the green agenda, we're joined by Michelle Sachs, Deputy Chief Executive for the newly formed partnership between Boston Borough Council, East Lindsey District Council and South Holland District Council. Michelle has responsibility for growth to include place, infrastructure, economic growth and transport, and is a passionate, as you will see, advocate for the wider Boston area, and is here to share some exciting developments towards green energy use. Michelle.
Thank you, Pat. And hello, everybody. It's good to be here. I'm always pleased to be able to go somewhere and talk about what's happening around the East and the South. It's great to hear all the previous speakers today around the passion for really green energy and being able to look at ports, logistics and the renewables. And it's great to hear what's happening on the Humber. We look up to the Humber from our place at the South and the East, and we often see how can we work with that, how can we develop that in the South and the East as well. But some of you will have been here last year as well when we launched the Food Valley. Sarah Louise is over there. And in the heart of our place, we've got around about 40,000 jobs connected to the food industry. We've got the food cluster in our locality. And part of that is all around the supply chain. We've heard around the circular economy today. So we have spent a good couple of years working with our businesses. And I think I'll also talk about collaboration, because one of the things that we've learned from having town boards, we've got 2 on my patch that secured over £70 million of investment into Boston, Mablethorpe and Skegness, is the importance of collaboration with the public and private and voluntary sector. And taking that collaboration and seeing what we can do. And we've been talking to our businesses, and again, back to the green energy, supply chains, the challenge of how do you get green supply chains when you are hauling food and fresh produce from effectively Spalding, which those of you probably do know, around between 1,250, 1,500 trucks a day leave Spalding. How do we improve the supply chain for that energy and that cost of diesel? So we've been developing our hydrogen projects, and we're looking at creating a network of hydrogen refuelling stations that encompass Spalding, Boston, over to the coast and up to Louth, so that actually that connection to the Humber in terms of Grimsby and Immingham, that actually as produce or as any thing comes through to our ports, we've got Immingham up in the north and we've got Boston in the south. How can we ensure that there is that network for our hauliers to be able to haul and get their vehicles using green energy and green technology? So we're really excited, and part of that is also around the skills agenda. So we've been working closely with Boston College, and if you haven't had a look yet, in the interval, do please go and look at the Boston College stand, where they actually have a hydrogen demonstration. So we can't wait to start bringing forward those hydrogen plants. We're looking at a combination of waste to hydrogen, and one of our partners is in the room today who's been really instrumental in looking at that circular economy, listening to Susan's point at the back there. Really focused on circular economy, how can we make sure we're cutting out the mileage, keeping things locally, using what's there to really maximise that whole supply chain network. Where do people come into the supply chain? How can we support it? So the end product, particularly in the food sector, that we all consume and perhaps not always think where it's come from, we can be assured that it's actually that supply chain right back from field to fork is actually part of that programme. And I think it's also where we talked about wind as well. We often associate wind with the big turbines, and those are massive turbines now that are happening up in the Humber. But actually, we're also really proud to be able to say that we're going to be bringing the first pilots to the UK of something called Ventum Dynamics. Now, if you Google Ventum Dynamics, you'll see they are wind turbines that are not like your traditional turbines, but they're circular and they work then whichever way the wind is blowing. So I think it's really good that the whole of Greater Lincolnshire can demonstrate its commitment to the green energy agenda, that net zero, climate change, and how we're really impacting. But actually around Greater Lincolnshire, we can demonstrate those hubs that are also really pushing forward that agenda when they might not be in the obvious choices or obvious locations, such as the north. And I think the last point I want to make around that, I ought to just say, we are again expecting our planning application for the first hydrogen plant to land before Christmas. So again, it's tangible, it's happening, the land's optioned, the parties are involved, it's there. You know, it's not just something that might happen, it's actually in progress. So that's really positive. But I think it comes back to that skills agenda and working with the colleges, Grimsby Tech, Boston College and the university, that whole collaborative feel again, because we can't do this in isolation. And that's what's so great about public-private. The public sector is able to facilitate, it's able to connect people, it's able to bring partners around a table with a common purpose and actually seek that long-term vision. And we're super proud to be part of that and doing that in the South and East Lincolnshire Council Partnership. So thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. I think that really does demonstrate that will be the largest private grid in the UK, and these plans are close to fruition. They're not pipe dreams, so thanks for that. Excuse me. We're now joined by David Talbot, one of the region's most plugged-in energy specialists, sorry to use a pun. David is the CEO of Catch UK, an industry-led partnership that supports the process, energy, engineering and renewables industries, and an organisation that engages with stakeholders, including government, to support skills needs and the wider journey to net zero for industrial decarbonisation of the Humber. Over to you, David.
Thanks very much, Pat, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm going to stick to the theme, really, that's evolving in this panel discussion around decarbonisation, net zero, and the skills that we need to deliver those programmes that we're working on within our region. I'm also going to stick to the theme of the Humber. For those who don't know us, as Pat outlined, we are an industrial membership skills and competency assurance organisation. We're based just outside Grimsby, and we primarily support chemical manufacturing, energy intensive and energy producing industries and organisations that support those industries around the Humber Bank. And we've got 50 core member companies, including the refineries, British Steel and all the companies at Saltend Chemical Park on the north bank of the Humber. Very, very Humber-centric, but certainly supporting Greater Lincolnshire region and into West Yorkshire as well. So I would like to talk for the next few minutes about the industrial decarbonisation agenda, but also linking that to the skills needs that we have, the critical skills needs that we have. And I really do have a call to arms here and a message that I want to get across. So what's our link to this agenda? Well, Catch is co-leading alongside the Hull and East Yorkshire LEP and a number of industrial partners in the Humber Industrial Cluster Plan. This is an absolutely critical piece of work for our region to support the UKRI intent to get to a low carbon cluster by 2030 and a net zero cluster by 2040. And for us in the Humber, that is absolutely critical. We are the biggest emitting cluster by a country mile. We emit 20 million tonnes of industrial emissions every year. And then if you include any, that's just to produce for the manufacturing industry. If we then add 5 million tonnes of emissions to produce the energy for that industry, you can see that we have a huge, huge problem on our hands. But actually what I'd like to do is see that as a huge opportunity. If anyone wants to learn a bit more about that, then we do actually have a stand in the exhibition hall, and my colleague Katie Hedges is leading on this work from a Catch perspective, and she's here to talk to you about the huge opportunity that we have. What I'd like to do is actually just delve a little deeper into the skills needs and keep that kind of theme going that we've started here around skills. So what is the Humber Industrial Cluster Plan? It is a roadmap to net zero for our region. And there's a number of work packages that are evolving as part of that work. And we're going to submit this in March of 23, so please look out for that work. But one of those packages of work is around skills, and we've engaged a consultant to undertake that work. What's coming out of that? Well, we've seen a draft of that work. And some of the key learnings are around, there is a huge, yes, we need skills at all levels, from ab initio into schools, STEM, right through to HE, developing new technology. But actually, where the gap is level 3, highly skilled technicians. We have a shortage now of those kind of people. Mechanical technicians, electrical, fabricators. We have a gap now that is affecting our industries. If you add £15 billion worth of investment that's needed to get to net zero, then we have a problem on our hands. But actually, we have a great opportunity. So part of our report has identified that we need technicians, we need mechanical, we need electrical, we need fabricators. We need people to build the infrastructure. If we don't build it, we won't have it. Or will we? Because people will come, this is a transient workforce. People will come from around the UK and overseas to deliver these projects. But we need to grow them here in Greater Lincolnshire, here in the Humber. So that's what's my ask, really. I've got 3 points I just want to quickly get over. One is we need to support the legacy work that comes out of the Humber Industrial Cluster Plan. All of us need to kind of engage with that, have a look at it when it comes out, and see where those needs are, and support the recommendations, and as we work with industry to get to net zero 2040. I was really pleased when I went onto the LEP skills page to see that actually the message is the same that I've been trying to put across today, that we need level 3 skilled technicians. So that was great. So what I'm asking as well is for the LEP strategy to support the need to get to this position. And then finally, we need to support the local skills improvement plan that's being delivered by the FSB, the Federation of Small Businesses. That's absolutely critical. And if you just beg my indulgence for one more moment, I was having a chat with one of my member companies the other day, and I was really excited, saying that actually at Catch we've now got 130 apprentices on our books, and I was really proud of that. And this chap said to me, "That's brilliant. You know, you've gone from 0 to 130 in a couple of years. Absolutely fantastic. What's it going to take to get to 1,000 a year? Because that's what we need. We need 75,000 new technicians over the next 20 years. And I'll leave you with that message. Thank you.
Yeah, that's quite a figure to quote, and it shows you the depth of that opportunity, and our educationists will be all over that clearly. And rest assured, David, the strategy of the LEP is absolutely fully behind the work you're doing. Our final speaker before we have a short Q&A session for this particular segment is Neil Bainbridge, Vice Chair and Principal at the Grimsby Institute, and holding the tough challenge of translating green energy jobs for the future into training programs for today. Neil has a wide industry-led background in automated and high-speed manufacturing, food handling and packaging, so knows a few things about the task in hand. Neil.
Thank you very much. I suppose from my perspective, when I was asked to come and speak today, I thought, what can I get into 5 minutes? So I broke it down to chunks. Obviously, we've been really lucky at Grimsby. We've got a fantastic bid writing team. Andy Gowdy and his team have been amazing for securing funds, and obviously working in partnership with the LEP have managed to secure us £1.4 million worth of investment. From that investment, we've created a low carbon energy centre. That low carbon energy centre is going to cover not only what we already do around the wind turbine technician shortage and those green skills. We've also looked at the infrastructure requirements for electric vehicles in Lincolnshire. I didn't put my hand up. I couldn't get here. I'm back today in an electric vehicle. So that infrastructure definitely needs to grow. So we've looked at that. We've incorporated that into that centre. We've incorporated battery and solar technology into that centre. We've incorporated hydrogen cell technology into that centre, all because of the partnership working we've done with the LEP. That gives us an open door then to move forward with other bids, so that's allowed us to do some work with government around the Skills Development Fund. If you've not heard about it, please talk to me. It allows us as FE providers to work completely differently. Most people think of colleges as somewhere that manufacture certificates and not necessarily the knowledge, skills and behaviours and attitudes that somebody mentioned earlier. We've done 2 years worth of work developing that model to make sure that we've got those knowledge, skills and behaviours. Again, if you're not seeing them come out, speak to me, because we can then do something to make sure that that's being pipelined to industry. From an outputs perspective, in 12 months, we've managed to upskill 300 staff so they understand their carbon impact, because understanding that is the first steps in reducing your energy usage. And at the end of the day, there's always going to be a maximum cap on the amount of energy we'll be able to produce from any system. We've upskilled students from level 1 to level 3 in carbon management and energy management. We've upskilled over 100 students to be able to understand how to work on electric and hybrid vehicles, because the high voltage batteries present their own dangers. We have 70 plus more apprenticeships on programme, about 50% of which are wind turbine technicians. So the skills agenda for us has been very wide. Like I say, and now the next steps will be the hydrogen cell technology. So the hydrogen distribution and generation network from low carbon energy to allow us to move goods around the country. Diesel needs to stop being used very quickly, and we need to replace it with a highly efficient fuel system. Electric trucks, electric cars and electric trucks are a great idea. There's not enough lithium on the planet to replace the vehicles on the road now. So we either start mining in space, which is going to be cost inhibitive, or we find another method. And the single most prolific thing in the universe is hydrogen. We just have to separate it by electrolysis and other methods from water, giving you a very clean energy product that gives you a waste product of nothing more than a bit of water vapour. So we've invested heavily in all those systems. Like I said, at the end of this session, if you want to grab me, I'll be about. I'm quite tall, that's kind of stand out. And I'm quite loud, so you can easily find me talking loudly to somebody. So that we can provide that infrastructure and that system so that we can continue to support, as we said earlier, the circular economy, because that's the next big thing. If we don't do that, and if you've read my bio, the one thing you do know is that I know how small the rock we're still on is. So we definitely need to look after it for the next generations. And I'm very, very passionate about that. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Neil. It's powerful stuff, this, and because of our timelines, we are tight, but we can leave space for a couple of questions. I would add, all our speakers are around during the coffee session and lunch session, so please follow up with, if you don't get a chance to ask a question now, please follow up with them at that point. But we have got time for a couple of questions. Can I see a hand? Well, top right, first hand up. So right in the corner. Sorry, Amy. If you could walk a bit faster.
Good morning. It's only a really quick question. Obviously, you're very hydrogen-led. So it's a quick question, like we said this morning. Where can I buy a hydrogen vehicle? Where is the investment? Ford, the manufacturers are all going electric. It's very clear. We've lost investment last week and a couple of months ago because everybody's going electrified. So all I'm asking you is, where can I buy these hydrogen vehicles to use your hydrogen network that you're going to build all this infrastructure? Because at the moment, I can't buy these, and Shell have just shut all their 12 hydrogen fueling stations in the UK. So if we've got something secret that we don't know, all I'm asking is, where can I buy these vehicles to utilise this infrastructure that you're building? Thank you.
Yeah, and that, I'll let one of the experts answer that question, but clearly we have relayed hydrogen projects to you this morning. Darren Cunningham is in the room as the head of the Phillips Petroleum refinery in the UK. They are working on synthetic fuels. There are a number of other solutions which are coming to the market as well. So it isn't just a one-trick pony. We just happened to focus this morning. But it's a good question. I don't know whether, David, you feel you can answer that one?
I suppose it will.
Yeah, they'll turn it on now.
Hello? So from my perspective, this is a personal view. I'm one of those who did put their hands up with the electric vehicles, so I can feel very smug. But in terms of hydrogen, I think the only point I want to make on that is you won't get the demand unless you get the infrastructure. It's the same with the electric vehicles. It's only taken off because I know that if I want to go on a 200-mile journey, then I know that there is infrastructure there. So it's almost QED, isn't it? You need the infrastructure before you can get the demand. That's my only point.
Anybody else want to comment? Michelle?
Thank you, Pat. And certainly from my perspective, we've been working with our large hauliers, and they are already working with the manufacturers to look at conversion, so taking existing diesel engines and how they can be converted to actually then take hydrogen and use hydrogen. So it might not be out there yet, but it's certainly in hand. And in terms of the infrastructure coming on stream, it's a good sort of time you put the planning into the process and then you do and then you build it. It's a good 18 months, 2 years before you'll actually be having a fueling station. But what that does mean is that during that interim, as I say, we've got our hauliers that we know they are absolutely looking at those conversions of their existing fleets, and also looking in terms of the turnover of their fleets, where they can start looking at the technology that's coming through. So, and there is a really good example of Aberdeen up in Scotland, Aberdeenshire Council. They have converted their trucks and their refuse and their small vehicles, and they have a dedicated fueling station there. So it's happening. And as a council, as the three council, because we have that economies of scale through 3 sets of refuse fleet, we're really fortunate our politicians are really on this, and they're asking us to examine what does hydrogen refuse trucks look like, because those of you know, diesel refuse trucks are incredibly unhelpful in the stop-start. The pollution, the inefficiencies of the diesel, something like hydrogen is a really interesting opportunity.
Thanks, Michelle. I don't know if Darren, we get a mic to Darren just to update us very quickly on the synthetic fuel project, because that's another very interesting alternative to hydrogen, which the room might be interested in hearing just very quickly where it is. Darren, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. So we're making low-carbon liquid fuels today by recycling waste oils. And so really, there's not one solution to how we reduce the carbon intensity of mobility. So low-carbon liquid fuels play a role. They're playing a role today, now, and that's by recycling things like used cooking oil to make those fuels. It reduces the carbon input. I think hydrogen has a role to play. We've got the Gigastack project, which is a joint venture with Ørsted, where we take offshore wind power, electrolyse refinery wastewater to produce hydrogen. We'll initially use that to refuel furnaces in the refinery to reduce emissions, but you could extend that to load trucks with hydrogen. I think likely the first adopters of large-scale hydrogen for mobility are probably heavy haulers, truck fleets, as one of your speakers says. You know, we have hydrogen fueling stations in Switzerland. We have partnerships with manufacturers of trucks. I see that's probably the way that hydrogen expands. And then electric vehicles also have a role to play, but, you know, different technologies probably for different uses. So light passenger vehicles, commuter vehicles, electric vehicles are probably the answer. Long distance, heavy haulage, it's probably more likely hydrogen. Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. So thank you for this panel.